it's me, Allison. This is Rachel.
Hi.
This is Rachel. I made her a pretty shirt. You can probably tell because it's in the title, and you can also tell it's a tutorial on how I made the shirt. That's it. So yeah, just watch some more, and you can find out how to make the shirt. Yay! That's how it's gonna start.
Starting with Simplicity's pattern 2741, you're going to want to cut out the pattern pieces for A. And out of your light gray fabric, you're going to cut out the back, front, shoulder, and yoke pieces. And for the front pieces, you can see what I'm doing. I'm marking about where I want the darker gray to be on the front panel of the shirt. There's two different ways you can do it. You can fold it, or you can just cut up the piece. I also recommend not using your expensive fancy fabric shears to cut paper. But I didn't realize I'd have to cut paper, so I only brought down my fancy shears to cut the fabric. For the yoke piece, you could cut it out, fold it out, but I decided to fold my fabric and then put the center line on the fold line and just cut it out that way, because then that guarantees that you'll have your yoke even on both sides. With the darker gray fabric, you're going to want to cut out pretty much all the same pieces, minus the sleeves. And for the front panel piece, you're going to want to cut out 4 of them. 2 for the lining, 2 for the front. So I have my fabric folded in half, and I just folded it in half again. And just snip, snip, man. Just cut it out. Just do it. Where that pin is where the hip is, and you're gonna sew all of that up from that pin up on your sides. So there's like that triangle shape that he has on the sides. You're gonna do that for all your side pieces, and then when you get to the back, you're gonna sew up the whole back except at the very bottom, leave a little bit of space. And for the yoke, just press out the seams from the back stitch line and pin and sew it up. Because the front panel is 2 different colors, you're going to want to sew them back together so it's one front panel for the front of the shirt. Once you have it sewn, you're going to want to press out your seam with an iron. And then you're going to want to flip it over and press the seam out on the other side. This time I chose to squirt water. I'd recommend doing it the same because it will get a lot of the wrinkles out of your fabric. And I recommend doing this to every seam and to each piece of fabric. So, I marked where the hip is with a pin, and I'm going to draw a line from that mark to the corner front of the front panel to get the curved straight line he has on his shirt in the front from his hip, because it does taper inwards. And once you have it cut out on that line, and I recommend cutting a little outside that line for seam allowance, You can then just layer that on top of your other pieces of front panels and just follow that cut line you have, and you'll have even cuts all the way around. I did the same thing to the back, having the pin marking the hip, and just tapered it in towards that corner, leaving it the same length, just cutting out some of that excess. And then when you're done cutting it out, you can fold the other in half with this one, so it's on the fold line where the center back seam is, and you can cut it out using your first cut as a guide for it. Next, you are going to sew up the sides and the shoulder pieces. Once those are sewed on both the lining and outer, you're going to put them together right sides facing. You're then going to pin along the front and the bottom, and you're going to sew that completely, leaving the neck and armholes open. I marked where I wanted the point of the V to end, so how deep I wanted it. And that's going to be different on every person. On this one, I made it about 10 inches. And then drew a line, kind of curved, mostly straight, from that to the shoulder seams. And then you're just going to cut it. Next, I made a 6-inch by 12-inch rectangle. When it's folded, it should be a 6x6. It is big enough to fit the Samsung Galaxy S6, so it's about an average phone size. To make the black flap bit that goes over it, I cut out a 6-inch by 4-inch, 4.5-inch, so when it's folded, it's about 2.5 inches. And then you're going to want to put interfacing on it, and then sew up the side seams and the top, leaving a hole to flip it inside out. Then from there, you're going to want to make a slit where you want your pocket to sit. You're going to then take one of the pocket rectangles, and you're going to put half of it, pin it to the bottom, and sew it. You're then going to flip this shirt inside out, and you're going to pin the other half of the pocket rectangle to the top half of the slit. From there, you want to flip it back inside out and then smooth it out as best as possible so it doesn't crinkle and gathers a whole lot. I made that mistake, and then I had to redo both of my pockets. So I'm here to help you. And then once you get it smoothed out, I pinned mine at the edges so it stayed that smoothed out, and then I flipped it back inside out. I pinned and sewed the side seams of the pocket. And then flipping it back inside out, I put a small zigzag on the edges just to keep it from fraying. I then pinned and top stitched the black flappy bit over it, so you can't tell there's a pocket there, so it's like total secret. It's awesome. I then started working on the collar, and doing that I just looked up a reference image, and I had half of what I needed, so I drew on half of paper on the fold, and just kind of drew out the shape that I needed his collar to be. I then pinned it to my black fabric, making sure it was long enough. I didn't need to pull it out from the fold a little bit any. I then just pinned, cut, and I cut out 2 of them at the same time. And I removed the pins because I wanted to lay super smooth, and that was a bad idea. Don't remove pins when you're cutting. Just over pin. I then put interfacing on both sides, or I put interfacing on one side of both of the pieces, and then you're going to want to sew up the bottom, the corner, and the curve, but leave the top completely open. And then now, once you have that sewn up, take the collar and pin it to one side of the shirt. So it's still open, you can still turn it inside out from the collar if you wanted to. And then from that point, once it's sewn, I flipped it up and then I just rolled and pinned the other side and top stitched, and then it was a super smooth finish with no raw edges to be seen at the neck or to touch your neck. And then for the sleeve, I figured out where I wanted the sleeve to end, so it's just a little bit below the elbow joint. And then I just cut off the extra. And then you're going to want to sew up the sides on both sleeves. For the cuff pit, on a fold again with some newspaper, I drew out kind of how I wanted it to look, how tall I wanted it, and there is a slight curve to where they meet in the back of it. And then once I had that piece, I cut out four of them on the fold of them, two for each cuff. And then I put interfacing on them. And then for each cuff, you're going to want to pin the sides together, and then you're going to fold them so their raw edges are, so right sides are together, and then you're going to sew on the top where the V is, but leave the bottom completely open so you can flip it inside out. And then that way, there's no raw edges. And then you're going to slide the sleeve into the cuff and sew the cuff to the sleeve. And once that's done, you're going to quarter off the sleeve and the armhole, and you're just going to work the sleeve into the armhole and pin it, and then of course sew it. I then found these really cool buttons from Joann's. They're kind of like a metal, I believe. I don't think they're actually plastic. And then I spaced out my 4 buttons about 1.5 inches apart from each other. It should end at the hip, the last button, so you'll have to figure it out for yourself. I then did a couple test runs to make sure that my buttonhole would actually accommodate the button itself. And then once I was sure, I sewed the buttonholes onto the shirt. And once you do this, this is like the no return point. This is it, man. You get one shot at making buttonholes. And then I stitched on the button on the other half of the shirt, so it And then for the cape bit, my friend actually did the majority of that for herself because she really wanted to make the cape. So we just kind of drew out a rough cape outline for him on the red fabric while it was folded in half. I'm sorry, the footage is a little shaky. I was holding the camera. I would recommend hemming it right now before you do any of the tattering and worn bit. And yes, a cat, super important to putting holes in your cape. Let me tell you, you need the cat. JK, you don't need a cat. So my friend took the cape home and she just cut holes and the slits into the cape itself. And then she took a Copic marker and just went around all the edges to make them look like they were burnt or dirty and stuff. And then when I got it back in my possession, I went around all of the hems and the holes with some fray check just so it didn't unravel, because the fabric we picked it frayed really badly. So I'd recommend finding a fabric that doesn't fray as bad. And then from that point, the shirt's pretty much done. You just need to add the cape. I chose to put it on Velcro, so that way you can take the cape off when you need to wash it. And I put the Velcro on the shoulder seams and then all the way around the neck. And now here is my lovely friend, Rachel, who the shirt is for, modeling the cape. Well, I mean the cape and the shirt. Yeah, so this is pretty much it. Please, if you have any more questions about how I made this, feel free to message me on my Facebook, here, on my Tumblr, wherever you think I'll respond fastest. It's probably going to be my Facebook page. But yes, this is a finished Qrow shirt. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope this helped you out in any way, shape, or form.
As a person